Howdy, and welcome to the Feed Bandit Podcast, where we have fun talking all things hunting, and in the process, do our best to support small and family-owned businesses in the hunting space. Here are your hosts and resident bandits, Jimmy Byrne and Richard Kinchlow. Howdy, everybody. Jimmy here, back for another edition of the Feed Bandit Podcast, and with me is my esteemed compadre, Richard. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, sir. Glad to be back.
Yes, absolutely. We've been a little busy, but we're back in the saddle, ready to record another awesome episode for you guys. A couple things we wanted to talk about today. Where do you want to begin?
Well, I think we had this past weekend at Rancho Bandido. We had a really kind of interesting situation occur, and it was, we sit here and we think about topics to talk about, things of that nature. And really, something that we probably should have talked about in early October was the proper way to track a wounded animal. Of course, it just dawned on me as I'm running through cactus and the cedar trees this past weekend at 8 o'clock at night doing that very thing. So,
right. Well, sometimes you don't think about it until it's right in front of you, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear the story. Just for you guys out there, the listeners, I have not heard the story yet. I know the end, but I don't know what all went down. So,
yep.
Because I was not there this time. So,
yep. Unfortunately, Jimmy's on a bit of a hiatus, or what do you say, from hunting? But that's going to be changing soon.
Yes.
The story starts kind of like they all do. One of our really good buddies was hunting, and he had actually what ended up being, and we'll post pictures. A unique situation with a very unique deer. A majority of the spikes that you see are going to be yearlings, year and a half old. Okay, that's just kind of the way it is. Well, our buddy again at Rancho Bandido had two spikes come out. One was significantly bigger than the other, and definitely had all the makings of a 2.5-year-old deer. Obviously, a spike at 2.5. The spike at 2.5 and older is it's no good. Now we're gonna that's a deer that you definitely want to harvest. We are looking for 6 points and more for a 2.5-year-old animal. So and obviously on this pasture that we're on has got a lot of protein, cottonseed, managed very intensely. So just you could definitely say that this deer probably had some genetic issues. So we definitely took care of his issues.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah,
just to throw this out there. I remember talking about antlers and age and everything like that. You read different things here and there, but I remember we sat with an old ranch biologist. I sat in a blind with him one time. You know who I'm talking about.
I do.
I was asking him. This is kind of back when I kind of started in the beginning of my hunting, first couple of years or whatever, and I asked him about spikes and age and all this type of stuff, and he said, in general, in the end, mature, healthy whitetail buck, at least originally, until I guess we started really pumping them full of protein and stuff, were 8 points, when they got to that point.
Correct.
And they would achieve ideally a healthy or a good one with good genetics should ideally achieve that really by what 2.5. I think is what he told me, and he said that a good a buck you want to pass on, and at 1.5 obviously, unless depending on your management, I guess. If it's 6 points, that's what it should be at 1.5.
Sure.
And then he said if you see a spike, then that obviously is a indication, or it could be, or usually is, like it's an indication of inferior genetics. So that would be one to take.
No, for sure. Yeah, that is definitely the kind of the old school way of thinking, and I think Texas Parks and Wildlife still supports that idea. And I'll be honest, I supported it for a long time too. We would see a spike, and as long as the spikes were over like 6 inches or so, we just blast away. I mean, my first deer 100,000 years ago was a spike, but I was also raised in the, you don't shoot does, God, you don't want to shoot your You don't want to
breeders.
shoot the vehicle that brings you the animals. So the philosophy has definitely changed. And at Rancho Bandido, that's kind of the way we were for a long time. We would kill all of our spikes, and we still will shoot a couple of spikes here and there, especially like the one that we got this past weekend. But typically we try to avoid them. We try to take out, cull deer, for example. Our definition of a cull is call it a 3.5-year-old deer, a 3.5, at least 3.5-year-old buck with 6 points. And we've got some great pictures of some dandies.
Nice.
we shot a real nice one a couple of weeks ago. That was, I think he went 165 pounds, big old 6 point.
Wow.
I personally love 6 points. So, but yeah, and that we can get more into this topic about as far as antlers and age and range conditions, because I think they're all they're all kind of coincide together. They're all dependent on each other. Is what I'm getting at.
Well, okay, let's paint the picture for people here. Let's paint it with a fine brush. So, was this this was in the morning or the afternoon hunt?
This was in the evening. This was in the evening, okay. And you could not ask for worse weather conditions. Well, okay, no, you could have had maybe tornadoes or hurricanes or lava blowing up everywhere.
Straight line winds or something, right?
Seriously, plague, whatever, locusts. I mean, it was just horrible. I mean, it was, here it is, November 30th or whatever it was. It's the thermometers, like you see in the Looney Tunes, busting out at 80 some odd degrees, howling south wind, high humidity. I am just getting over having almost like semi-bronchitis, and God only knows what I got from traveling all over this country in the month of November. And I'm in the blind, sneezing constantly. It was just terrible, terrible conditions. And we were really concerned that the deer would not move. And I'll tell you, when the feeders went off at 4 o'clock, we had dove and cardinals, all kinds of birds of feather, but we had no deer. Mm-hmm. But sure enough, about 4:50, the wind died down, started to get a little bit cooler, and it's just like the light went off and snap, here they come. And I was hunting about 2 miles away, and
now where was
he was on the front area of the place.
Oh, okay.
So he and I was about a mile or so away, or 2 miles away. And I actually ended up shooting a deer, and then about 10 minutes later, he ended up shooting his deer. So it kind of going back to him, again, kind of more painting the picture. He had multiple deer come in, several of which were just beautiful deer, deer that we will not be shooting anytime soon. I think he had a big straight line 10 point and a couple of big 8s. And of course, he had a very young spike come in, and the spike that he ended up shooting. And again, as far as equipment is concerned, our friend here shoots a 7 mag with like a 140 grain bullet. So he's really meant. He can take care of whitetail hogs, abominable snow monster,
right? He's
whatever.
got the cannon.
Yeah, cannon. But it's important that we talk about what he's shooting. So the story goes. He put and mind you, our buddy is an outstanding shot. I don't think this has ever happened to him, but
and he's got amazing luck just for
he does
to see a deer almost every time.
He does.
Unbelievable. It's guaranteed almost when his scent is in the air. It's like
he is insanely lucky. He is insanely lucky. So yeah, so he pulls the trigger. This would be his second or third deer of the year. He pulls the trigger, and the deer does kind of the lunge up and then kicks his legs out. And I, growing up, that was always called the telltale hop. I'm not sure if what. I don't think that's a technical term, but that's what I learned to call it as. But that was an indication that the deer had been shot in the lungs. And of course, the deer ran off, and it's happened, many times to me shooting deer in the lungs. It's it's a dead deer running, but the heart's still going, so that thing keeps moving. Again, this deer, was a 2.5-year-old deer, so we're not talking about a monster. And again, with that 7mm at under 100 yards, you would think that a lung shot deer, again, especially a smaller body deer, wouldn't have the wherewithal to make it very far. So he deer runs off. He texts me. We're kind of hooping and hollering because I had just dropped a deer too, which mine was about 100-yard neck shot, but no big deal. And which, if you know me, I was shaking like, I mean, God, you would have thought that there was a trimmer in the blind. It was awful. Thanks, and you know what? I didn't video it either, and that's probably good because I was shaking so bad. Anyway, but he texts me and says, "All right, he ran off. He did a little hop thing, so I'm pretty sure he's lung shot. No big deal." I said, "Okay." So I go and gather my deer, and I start heading back to the cleaning station, and I text him because I hadn't heard from him, and I said, you found him? He says, "No." He texts me back. I hadn't seen anything. I hadn't found anything. I found a little bit of blood. But that's about it. And the lung shot deer sometimes will not bleed very much. I have found that to be the case. So I said,
let me ask you here. Let me ask you here, and maybe you'll mention this later on. And if you do, just move on. But did he wait in the blind long enough, or that could be a good point to talk about here. About
for sure, and that's one of the things I want to circle back around and talk about. Kind of over the hundreds of years I've been doing this, and really what I consider to be the gospel when it comes to tracking animals and what you should do to significantly increase your chances of recovering an animal.
Okay, we'll circle back to that.
Yeah. So I end up dropping my deer off. We've got a walk-in cooler because again, I ain't gonna let that deer hang when it's 80 degrees. So I put my buck in the cooler after I tagged it, of course, and then I went out to help him. And, I always carry my flashlight with me. I always make sure it's got fresh batteries at the beginning of the season for this very, very reason. So I pull up to where he is, and his pickup's there near the feeder. And
how long has it been since he shot it to this point, you think?
To this point, it's a great question. It's probably been 30 or 40 minutes. So plenty of time for a lung shot deer to expire, Anyway, so we go, we go to where he last found blood, and it is a great sign. I mean, it is gushing out. It is full of bubbles, and it's very light. So it's oxygenated. I can never pronounce that word. But it's got bubbles in it. You can definitely tell he hit him in the lungs. And again, with that 7mm, smaller body deer, I'm putting all the things together in my head. Hey, he's just going to be right here. No big deal,
Right. You're just right under that tree.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he died right there, and again, that's what we're hoping for. So we kind of start the tracking process, and there's just a ton of blood, and then we kind of start to get our flashlights, and we're staring at that ground, and we just can't find any.
So it's dark now. I mean,
yes. Thank you. Yes, it is definitely dark by now, and it's windy, and that's important because we've got everything's kind of moving, so your attention gets caught by everything.
Do you have don't you have the blood flashlight, like one that has
I did, but it
work?
stuck in my pocket because it was in my pocket because when I went to click it on, I did not put new batteries in it.
Oh, but you did the other one.
Yes, but I did the other one.
At least one of them had new batteries.
Exactly. So,
does that actually work, by the way? That flashlight?
It's funny you say that because it has a green. It's got a regular LED. It's got a green light and a red light. And I always just seem to end up using the white light. Truth be told, I actually end up just normally giving it to somebody, for them to use, because it's a pretty bright light. But I actually never played with it, and that was kind of my intention, was to try to use it. But again, it wasn't working. So anyway, we go and we start to track this deer, and so what we typically do is, and I'm kind of getting ahead of it, but we'll have somebody right there kind of mark the last spot that you were at, that you found blood, and then that person kind of searches, and the other person kind of goes a little bit forward. Mind you, we really try to stay off of the trail that we think that deer traveled, because obviously, you know, a size 13 boot on a little speck of blood, it's gone, you know. So that's kind of the way we typically track, and of course, it ended up being great now. But it is amazing to me how this deer lost that much blood initially, and was able to keep on trucking. So we tracked this deer through some extremely thick cactus flats, through some very thick cedar trees, but nonetheless, this deer went for probably a quarter mile, really along a well made track, you know, made by other deer, you know, which again is typically what they will do, until they really start to get to the end, and then they will kind of start to deviate. But again, about a quarter of a mile with just very faint blood here and there. It was an amazing tracking job. And we're talking this thing, and again, it was on trails, but it was going over logs. Okay, it was going through cactus. You know, thankfully we had a lot of disturbed soil where we were tracking with a lot of rocks. So when that red blood hits those white rocks, I mean, obviously that's a real easy sign. But again, you know, a quarter mile into this thing, and at least an hour and a half into tracking this deer, you know, it would kind of pick up a little bit, but then it would stop. You know, so we'd have to go back and look for little specks, and then we reached a point where we got to an overgrown road, and on that overgrown road, you know, we didn't have any trees or stumps. We just had frickin' you know, buffalo grass and whatnot. Right. It was waist high. So I mean, and the thing is, every time we come to this road, okay, well, where's that deer going to go? Is he going to go right? Is he going to go left? Or is he going to go straight? So we had to stand there, and we had to, you know, to pull the grass back and look, you know, we had to kind of look on the left side, because that's where the exit wound was, you know, kind of along the trail, and look for it. Well, again, you know, just keep going and keep going, thinking that, man, this deer has just got to be here any minute now. You mind you, we're just getting further and further away from the truck the entire time.
Oh yeah, it is black. It's dark as
it is very dark,
dark as night.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess maybe you're looking back. Did you have the headlights to kind of give you a little?
No, God, no.
You're too far into.
Oh God, no. We were so far into there, and I'll get to that point in a minute. We were so far in there that you couldn't even hear somebody yelling at you from where that feeder was. We were that far back there. So again, you track, and blood starts to pick up a little bit more. We start to get a little bit more encouraged, because it's a pretty good trail, you know, and we're starting to find it every couple of feet, you know. Well, we come to yet another overgrown road with this big high prairie grass. And you know, we kind of do our same approach that we've been doing. You know, I stopped right there at the kind of the quote unquote entrance to this road, and our buddy, he ended up kind of getting on the road, and if you look down, you know, look to our right, there's a very clear, you know, trail where the deer have been walking up and down. I said, Ty, I guarantee you, he walked down that road. I'm going to stay right here. Why don't you just walk down that road and check out the left side of the trail, and I guarantee we'll pick it back up. You know, and so he started doing that, and he started walking down the road. And so while he's doing that, since I'm the one who's kind of calling the marker, what I will typically do is I'll just get my flashlight and just kind of pan around, you know. Obviously, I mean, I'm not doing anything else, so I was just panning around. Well, our buddy Tyson gets about halfway down that road, and I'm panning to the left, and boy, that is when it catches me. There is a pile of blood, just to the left of this trail. And I mean, I don't know how we kind of missed it originally, but it's probably
it's easy to do when it's dark.
Oh, but big time, yeah. It was probably 3 foot by 3 foot. I mean,
oh wow!
So, and so I said, okay, clearly this guy had laid down there. You know, yeah, potentially, yeah. I mean, you couldn't miss us. And so he had clearly laid down there, and so I called Ty back, and we start moving down that road, and 10 yards down the road, there he is, you know. And of course, we were were hooping and hollering, and boy, what a celebration. We were just, I mean, it was a hell of a tracking job. You know, I've tracked a lot of deer in my life, and I haven't found maybe two or three, but this one was a hell of a job. So I was really impressed. Now, kind of the funny thing about this is that Tyson has a young son, young as in like 5 years old. Well, tracking this deer through the bush, with
He
it
was in the
being
line
warm,
with him, right? Yeah.
he was in the blind with, he didn't want to bring his son with him
Right.
as we're tracking the deer because cactus, all that kind of stuff. So he's a tough little dude. He sat in the pickup. Well, as Tyson and I are tracking this deer, we realize, oh my God, so he originally put him in the pickup. Okay, let me back up. He originally put him in the pickup. I got there, joined Tyson. We start going down the road. I said, hey, dude, what about Bo? He goes, oh no, I got to go get Bo. So he goes and gets Bo, and he puts Bo in one of the other ranch vehicles, in the Jeep, and brings him a little bit closer, okay, while I continue to track, right? So Bo's in the Jeep. He's safe and sound, but I don't know where Tyson parked the Jeep. So we end up finding the deer, and and we end up finding the deer, and I say to him, okay, this is great. I said, I tell you what I'll do, I'll run back and I'll find the Jeep and I'll bring it around with Bo, and we'll pick it up. We'll pick up the deer, and then because I kind of had an idea of where we had found the deer. So I walk all the way back, and I can't find the Jeep. I can't find it anywhere. And so I start kind of panicking because I know that there's a 5-year-old boy out there in the Jeep in the middle of the bush,
Right.
who's probably freaking out right now. And so I start calling Tyson, and his phone keeps going to voicemail.
Oh,
Keeps going to voicemail, keeps going to voicemail. And I'm like, boy, this is not happening. So I start screaming as loud as I can, and he can't hear me. That's how far away he
wow.
was. And if it's not eerie enough, the second I start screaming at him, guess who starts screaming back at me?
Bo?
And it's coyotes.
Okay.
I am not kidding you. And,
Really?
when I hooked up with Tyson later, he's like, oh man, they were right there. He goes, I had my fists ready because that's all I had. Which of course would have made a more interesting story. So,
right.
so now I've lost him. We found the deer, and I've lost his son and a vehicle. So this is getting awful expensive. So I ended up getting his truck and finally just driving to where I think he is. And then I started to honk, and then started to yell. And finally I connected with him. We picked up the deer. Tyson went and found Bo in the Jeep. Bo was sleeping the entire time.
Nice. Good boy.
We ended up getting, good boy. Yeah, we ended up getting the deer back, and he was a bit rigged, but still great hunt.
So, okay, so from the time he shot him to the time y'all found him,
Right.
how long was that, you think?
Oh, God. Like 2.5 hours, something like that.
Okay, so you probably searched for at least an hour and a half, hour and
At
almost
least.
2 hours, maybe.
At least. Yep, and that's what I always want to talk about next. And here's the most interesting thing, and we're going to post pictures of it. Again, this goes to why I was talking about the gear that he was using. The hole in this deer's chest, I've never seen anything like it. In fact, when we found the deer, we thought, the mountain lion or a Kodiak bear or some undiscovered animal had just taken a chunk out of his chest. It was the size of a small watermelon.
Wow.
I can't wait for everybody to see the picture. I've never seen anything like it. And it was that 7mm, and that deer went that far.
Right. That is crazy.
It is absolutely incredible, and we always talk about, deer being tough as nails, and all animals being tough as nails, especially compared to us pansy humans. But for this thing to go as long as he did and as far as he did is really, it's amazing. And I guess what ended up happening is he ended up going for a neck shot and hit him a little bit low. But again, with at that distance, with a bullet of that magnitude or that much punch behind it, for it to make it that far was it's amazing. So
he was going for a neck shot, but he hit him in the lungs.
Well, he hit him a little down.
Okay.
He hit him a little down and a little forward. So like one of the shoulders.
So it wasn't a pure broadside like shot. Probably. I'm
I
trying to
don't
picture it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, wait, just obviously wait till you see the picture. I mean,
Yeah.
God, the damage that it did was just amazing.
Man, I mean, it's crazy how sometimes you'll shoot one and
Right,
it'll fall right immediately.
right, right,
And even without it nicking the heart or anything.
right.
Sometimes they just
Exactly.
bam fall, and then this
Yep.
time he blows off whatever he did. I got to see the
Yep.
picture along with the listeners, but and it
Right.
still ran that far.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Amazing. Amazing.
so.
So yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say they just talk real quickly, kind of about how we track,
Mhm.
and kind of the the thinking behind all of it, and what do the animals do, and what you should do and what you should not do. Our kind of our rule of thumb, the way I was raised and the way I've done it, and it's treated me very well. Is basically, if you see that animal fall right then and there, and it's not blinking, it's not moving, I typically take my time and go get my vehicle and then come back and, and recover the animal. But my rule of thumb is that animal runs off and you do not see it. Okay, you do not see where it fell. I typically will wait in the blind or wait in the area for an additional 10 to 15 minutes, and then I will very quietly and slowly back out of there and give it another 15 or 20 minutes. And really what you're doing by doing that is you're just letting the animal expire naturally. Now, I don't know if our buddy went out there too fast. I don't think he did. In that case, like with a lot of gut shot deer, they're just gonna run to the next county if they can.
Right.
But that's always a really good rule of thumb that'll give them some time to just chill and hopefully expire quickly. The second tip I can give is have a buddy. Have a buddy. Having a buddy or multiple buddies is even better. That way you can get out there and really work the area good. Now, that can of course backfire if you got a bunch of guys that are out there and they're walking all over the trail,
Mm-hmm.
So the way we like to do it, and we kind of alluded to it earlier, is we find the last spot of blood, and then again, we just kind of, okay, where's this deer gonna go? Again, typically they're going to travel, even if they're really hurt, they're going to travel the path of least resistance. And of course, with this deer, it ended up being the case again until the very end, until he deviated from that road. And then again, you got to kind of look on the side of the trail where the exit wound would be. But that's how we do it. It's kind of the marker and the forward guy, and that's what we did, and it was extremely successful.
Talk about what you at the beginning though, when you went and you looked for the initial blood, like where he was shot, and you like what were those things that made you think it was a lung shot and versus a normal or different area?
Right. So yeah, when he went to the actual spot where the deer was staying, there was no blood.
Okay.
There was no blood at all. And then of course he kind of went to the area where he thought that the deer had run, and that's when he found all the very bubbly light colored blood that led him to believe that this was indeed a lung shot.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we knew where it was, and then that's where we began the trail. If it had been me and I had been by myself, one of the things that I always like to utilize in the daytime and in the dark are kind of marking objects. If you don't have a buddy who can be there with you to help, I will find sticks and I will make little teepees in the trail, and I make teepees as opposed to just putting rocks there, so I can look back and I can see them sticking out of the grass.
That's a good idea.
I actually did at one of the places on one of the other pastures where I lung shot a deer, and he ran. God, he ran for a good 200 yards. Thankfully, it was straight down a trail, but I ended up just marking it the whole way, and it kind of walking back, it was kind of funny. I had to move everything to get the Jeep back there, but yeah, you using trail markers when you're by yourself or when you're with your buddy, especially at night. That's a really good tip. And then obviously, probably the biggest tip is have a good flashlight. God, you've just got to have You got to have it. So that's what that's kind of my my tracking tips. But obviously you can avoid tracking altogether if you get out there and you really practice. Now things are going to happen. Deer's going to
Sure.
step forward the last minute. Deer, but I would say that a lot of wounded deer are probably by the folks who just don't practice. And it's going to happen. By the way, it's happened to me.
Yeah.
I've lost 2 deer in my career.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of it, but it happens. It'll happen again.
Oh yeah, I've lost them too, and it's
Yep.
it's a terrible feeling.
It is a
But,
sick feeling.
but it happens. That's for
It
sure.
does. It does.
Talk
So,
about you mentioned right at the beginning of this what he said the deer did right when he shot it, and I think probably that's an important takeaway too. Is
Right.
when you're shooting a deer, to try to watch its action like right when
Yeah.
you shoot at it, so that it's you can feel confident that you did hit it. Because sometimes, it doesn't happen every time. Because I mean,
Right.
Lord knows I've shot a deer and it like ran right there, then died. But it
Right.
it didn't seem like it even flinched, but
Sure.
it was dead
Sure.
5 yards away, but
Right.
just out of my sight, or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you can see it do that kind of flinch or that
Right.
jerk or whatever it was, and that's why it's important, I think, or not, I think, just to watch as much as possible that deer until you follow it until it falls, or follow it till it disappears.
Absolutely.
But also right at the beginning, how it moves. You know.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Again, a long shot deer typically, from my experience and just from stuff I've seen on TV, they do this kind of lower their shoulders, and a lot of times they'll kick. I'm not sure why they do that, but that's what they do, and that's again I probably think I saw this in a show a billion years ago when I was a kid. I begged my father to buy me this is VHS tapes, of deer hunting, and I literally watched them till they were. I mean, they probably couldn't even play anymore. And anyways, they called it the telltale hop, and it's when they lunge forward and they kick their back legs out. And then that's apparently a good indication they've been lung shot. And I've seen them do that before. I've also seen them, where you on a lung shot deer to where if you're on a whitetail deer, because it's different with exotics. If you're a little forward and you hit that shoulder, sometimes they'll lunge forward, but then that arm, that leg, that front shoulder that's closest to you will basically act like it's paralyzed,
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're talking about a dead deer. Normally, the gut shot deer, those are the scary ones in my opinion, because you really struggled. You kind of like, okay, wait a minute, did I hit that deer?
Right.
I don't know. And the thing is, a gut shot deer, with a gut shot deer, you have not hit anything vital. You've not hit the lungs, you've not hit the heart, you've not hit the spine. So a gut shot deer will run just like I'm really scared the crap out of me type deer. And that's tough, man. Those are really tough. Now, on some occasions, for example, my first deer when I was 10, I think I shot a spike, and I basically lined up the crosshair, started to cry, looked away, and pulled the trigger. And this deer was it was a year and a half old deer. It was very small, and it just blew him down. So I knew that I had hit him. But anyways, we obviously got him. But sometimes I remember I got shot a bigger deer about 10 years ago. Just made a really errant shot, and boy, he took off like a bat out of hell. I don't know if you remember this one. You actually helped me recover him, and now we gave him about an hour, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then sure enough, because we didn't push him, and we gave him proper time, we ended up finding him in that creek. Remember that?
Yeah.
I was freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that deer, I distinctly remember that deer making no indication that he was fatally hit. So,
yeah, I mean, it happens. I remember the oddest reaction, and this kind of goes to your description of a long shot deer, and I think it was a long shot in the end, but it was the doe, and I shot at one of the blinds, and it was facing me,
right.
and Typically, I shoot it broadside. That's what I do. I do heart and lung. That's pretty much all I ever do. For whatever reason, today I decided to shoot it, right there, going for the heart. The exposed kind of area right there.
Right.
And I shot her. It was a doe. It was one of the biggest doe I've shot. And her initial reaction was like to bend down on her front legs.
Right.
And then I guess her muscles spasmed or something, and her front legs pushed so hard that she did a backflip.
Oh God, really?
And then laid down right there. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
that was an interesting one. So I mean, that was one of those I shot her and I watched she did that flip, and I was like,
Yeah.
holy crap!
Oh yeah.
Wow. So I mean, the reactions can be interesting.
No, for sure, for sure. The deer that I shot, again, my amazing neck shot, it was facing right at me. And if you look at a white-tailed deer, they've got kind of that throat patch per se. And then I typically will put my crosshairs between the below the throat patch, and kind of the base of the neck. That way, I increase my chances of making a fatal shot. Moreover, especially shooting a ballistic tip, I have found that when that bullet gets in there, it'll really rattle around. It'll really jack him up pretty good and put him down quickly. When I shot this buck, he was eating out of the protein feeder, again facing me, so I got him in that spot, and he pulled out of that feeder and fell on the ground. And then was basically just, again, it was kind of like of a cartoon. His legs were all wild and crazy, and I didn't see him fall down, but he piled up. He didn't go 10 yards, piled up there. But again, I followed my rule of thumb, and I did not see him fall. Knew he was hit, thought he was hit pretty good, so I gave him a good 20 minutes or so. Then sure enough, there he was piled up. But yep.
What talk about the importance of being patient, when you're doing this, because it's when you're helping someone who's shot, it's much, it's easier to be patient because you're like, and then you encourage the person and all this, who shot, but you're the one searching for your own deer, you you already feel bad after a while.
Absolutely.
And you're getting frustrated because you don't see them, but you got to keep doing it. Your example, it took a couple hours to find this deer. Others people search for 4 hours, or whatever. And you just gotta be positive, I guess. Be patient and positive.
You got to. You really do. And again, it's horrible, but you sit there and you look at your phone, and I mean there are times when I've even almost thought about setting my alarm on my phone. Setting a deal for 20 minutes, and that way I'm not constantly looking at my phone. But again, if you did make an errant shot, okay, and you get in there too soon, you're going to push that deer, especially if he's gut shot. Mm-hmm. Again, a gut shot deer will just run forever. And don't forget, the blood factor on the gut shot deer may not be there. Mm-hmm. And boy, if that's the case, it's just going to be really tough to find them. In the case of you and I, when I made that bad shot, we gave that deer over an hour, and it was good and cold, so the meat was fine. And he ran 50, crossed over a creek, probably went another 20, and died up on the kind of the base of the hill. And I remember you found him, and I couldn't believe it. But again, we kind of let him do his thing. That bullet got in there, and it did its job. So
now, when would you stop looking? It's
it's
kind of one of those things you don't ever know. It's just
sure.
for sure. It's like the worst decision, or worst. It's a tough decision, I should say, to make.
Yeah, no,
you haven't found one yet.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt. That's really tough. God, I remember one of our other good buddies we've been hunting about the same time. One of the two that I wounded, shot her right in the lungs at 50 yards. I still to this day, how we couldn't find her, I'll never know. But we probably gave it a good 3 hours, at least. Then we went back the next day. Mm-hmm. Then I went back the next weekend, and could not find her.
Wow.
But I will typically look until I just can't look anymore, till the flashlight dies, or I am just physically exhausted, and then that because I feel like I owe it to him, you know.
Sure. Absolutely.
Um, of course, and the one thing everybody's got to remember, and it's true, that if you don't recover that animal, okay, yeah, you're not going to be able to eat it, okay, and the meat will go to waste from that point of view. However, that deer will be consumed very, very, very quickly by the other critters, you know.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that people look at that. It's not like it's just going to sit there and, and just biodegrade. The other animals are going to tear it up, and it's just going to be back part kind of the
Circle of
uh,
life.
exactly. And it sucks that you didn't get it, but you gotta learn from it. So
Right.
yeah, it just depends. Now I know in some of the other states, and then of course this could happen here in Texas too. If you shoot a deer at night and it's the low is 10 degrees or 20 degree below freezing, let's put it that way, and you don't recover your animal, a lot of times they'll just go back the next day.
Hmm.
Now they don't. I don't think they've got the coyotes and the hogs like we do, because obviously they'll make quick work of them. But I've seen many a hunting show that they shot this gigantic Iowa buck and it's minus 45 and like, well, we're not going to push them, and then they go back the next day.
Right.
Of course that's a lot of time with archery gear, which is kind of a
Hmm.
whole different ball game. But yeah, especially with this deer that we got the last Friday night, we just, if we had gone back the next day, it would have been just for a moral victory.
Yep.
That
Yep.
meat would have been beyond disgusting.
He could have got the skull or the antlers at least, maybe.
True. Very true. Very true.
All right.
Very
Well, that's
true.
good
Yep.
stuff. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I guess the moral of the story, just try to pay attention to what the animal does when you shoot it.
Yep.
Watch it as far as much as you can. Mark it. Take your time. Be patient,
Absolutely.
or especially be patient getting out of the blind, and so you don't
Absolutely.
push it.
Yep.
And really just be patient while you're looking and keep your head down, look for the blood, and
Absolutely.
if you can't find them after a long enough time, only you'll know, I guess, whether you've put in the effort enough to find them.
Right.
But you get to that point where it's like, I feel like I've done everything I can, and if you can't find them, then it happens.
Yep.
In the end, it happens to everybody. So,
Something else I'll mention that it's become a real big thing lately here in Texas is using tracking dogs. The national or the state dog of the official state dog of Texas is the blue Lacey, and they're half coyote, half something, or half cur, or something like that. Anyways, they are outstanding tracking dogs. And the Lacey, a lot of ranchers and hunting guides and whatnot use Lacey's to I think it's Lacey's, is that right?
yeah, blue lacy.
Yeah, blue Lacey.
Pretty
Okay.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like 95% sure on that.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's right. They use these dogs to track these deer. I mean, and then these guys drive hours for them. So, one of the things that I'm actually thinking about doing with my next dog is trying to make that dog kind of into a blood trailing dog. I tried to use her one time, and of course she's chasing squirrels and rabbits and birds, which that's okay because that's kind of what I trained her for. But I would love to train a blood dog because that's obviously can be very, very handy. So yeah.
Yeah, and you barely mentioned it, but there are some people out there that offer those services.
Definitely.
So open your phone and Google some of them. That'd be great to get one of them on here and talk about.
Yeah,
that.
that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
There's
So
one
stay tuned.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's one gentleman down in South Texas who that's what he does.
Wow, for a
I
living.
mean, God, can you imagine?
Huh.
Okay, honey, got to go to this ranch. I mean, oh my
Right.
God, that's great. Good.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So, yep,
All right,
absolutely.
Let's make a note of that.
I will do that.
All right, awesome. You got anything else on this topic? I think that's a good one for today.
I think so too, my friend. No, we're good. Just It's December. Glad to be back in the saddle. November was lots of trade shows and lots of cities that I don't like to be in, so it's good to be home.
Absolutely. Good to get back out to El Rancho Bandido.
Absolutely. I was starting to get a Yankee accent there for a little bit, so glad that's no longer a problem.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for that one, and everyone out there, just stay tuned for next episode of the Feed Bandit podcast. And while you're at it, be sure to check out our website, feedbandit.com, where we're running some giveaways, some gear giveaways, some book giveaways, things of that nature. So just stay tuned for things like that, and be sure to sign up for our email list. Go to feedbandit.com/join. And on there, we will also make you aware of whenever, obviously, new podcasts come out, but also some of the gear that we're giving away. So, be sure just to stay tuned and check us out at feedbandit.com, and we will talk to you soon. All right, thank you very much, and remember, support your local feed store. Thanks for listening to the Feed Bandit podcast. If you want to find new and innovative hunting gear and service providers not typically offered through the traditional big box hunting stores, come on over and join the hunt at feedbandit.com/join. When you join, as a bonus, you'll get our entertaining free e-guide of unique hunting tips and tricks. And a reminder to all you small businesses, feed stores, gear inventors, or entrepreneurs in the hunting space, if you'd like to get more exposure to potential customers by being featured on the Feed Bandit podcast, please let us know. We'd love to discuss what we can do for you and your business. Go to feedbandit.com/promote. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give us a rating and review on iTunes, as it would really help us out. Go to feedbandit.com/iTunes. Thanks everyone for listening. Until next time, please remember to support your local feed store.